I think we're already live.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Oh, sorry, y'all.
I guess I
Yeah,
know what it was.
yeah.
When we did it last week, I turned off the intro. So we're just, oh man.
Hey, we apologize about that, man. If I've said it once, I've said it 5 times. It's the joy of live production, man. We were waiting on our little intro video to get cranked
Here
up,
you go.
but I guess
Here you go.
All right, we'll try this a second time, man. Good morning and welcome to Around the State, a Prep Baseball Alabama podcast discussing all things relative to prep baseball across the Yellowhammer State. This is our last regular podcast. Now, don't get that confused. This is not our last podcast, but this is our last weekly podcast to release rankings and to release the Power 25. Before we get into everything today, as we always do, little intro, but I do want to add one thing. This will be the final week of rankings for 1A through 6A. Now, we'll be releasing all of our 1A through 7A here later in the show, but this will be the last week of rankings 1A through 6A. And next week, we will release one more 7A top 10 as their area play wraps up this coming week while the 1A through 6A gets started. But, man, we've talked about it, man. It's once the season starts, it seems like it just rolls by. Man, obviously, looking ahead to this week, I know that tonight I'm headed out for a big matchup between Hartzell and Bob Jones. Don't want to give away those rankings yet. We'll see those here in just a little bit, but obviously they're both going to be they're going to be towards the top of 6A and 7A. They've been there all year long, but headed out there tonight for a 7:30 start, a little later than normal, but it's a 7:30 start. And then, Thursday, we are going to try to catch some possible big area games, possibly some first-round playoff games because some of those are on Thursday. And then Friday, we will be going different parts of the state, trying to, get eyes on some of the big matchups. And there's a couple of them. And while I'm talking about that, we'll reiterate it through the show, especially towards the end. We will have our first-round special podcast tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And you may want to bring coffee and a couple snacks with you because that one is always a long one because we try to preview as much as we can for each matchup, 1A through 6A. But that'll be tomorrow. That we're not going to, get into the playoffs much today. I'm sure we'll talk about them a little bit, but tomorrow will be our big playoff podcast. Again, that's at 10 a.m. tomorrow, right back here. For those of you that want to come back and listen, it's always that's when it's always fun, man. Start making predictions and go make 50% of the people happy and 50% of the people mad. But we enjoy doing it, and obviously we don't care who wins any of the matchups. So good morning, Austin. Everything well in your world?
Everything's great. It's great when it's postseason time, and these I know we've had that started that playoff pairings page not a few days ago and quickly filled up, and I dove into game changers. I've heard of I've looked at teams game changers I had never heard of in the state of Alabama, trying to find who's the area winner, who's a area runner up, and got I think pretty like 98% pinned down right now. There's one or two runner-ups in different areas and the smaller classifications that we're still looking for. And then, once we finish all those playoff pairings, get every team in there set, we'll release the brackets onto Twitter for 1A through 6A, and then we'll fire up that bracket challenge. I've already got it set up, and just waiting on some of those two of those matchups to get finalized, and we'll fire out those brackets. But speaking of the bracket challenge, for those who don't know, I think this is the 4th year we've done this. Similar to March Madness, it's just a March Madness style bracket for those who fill out brackets during the NCAA basketball tournament. We create 6 brackets. It's on a website. We'll have a full release on it with steps and what you get if you win, how to win. 6 brackets, so there's 6 leagues, and you're trying to accumulate the most points possible throughout the round. So you can't fill out a bracket in 6A and not fill out one in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5A and expect to win. It's the most accumulated points for 1A through 6A. I think the first round, if you pick the first round right, it's 2 points. Next round, it's 4 points, all the way up to if you pick the correct champion, you get 10 points. So that's the best way to accumulate points, and the website has a running leaderboard for each classification, so you'll be able to see where you stack up, and that's always a cool part of it, and being able to kind of we get on here and talk baseball all year long, but it gives the audience a chance to kind of get into the action and pick who they think is going to win each classification. So it's a fun time of the year, and we've got our usual listeners on. What's up, Austin? Cotton Olin.
Yep.
There it is. And
but
not least.
Oh, look who it is! Good
Julie
morning,
Rogers. Hey, Juju.
But Ross, did you get your lunch in return? I know you bet, but did you actually get your free lunch?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably
That's
not.
right. Yeah. We enjoy the interaction there. And again, as Austin mentioned, it gives you a chance to go against everyone else, to pick against everyone else. It's a lot of fun. It's all in fun and games. But that'll, as Austin said, okay. Ross lost last year. Okay. I'm sorry. He paid up. All right. Man of his word. So yeah, that's just a fun way to follow the playoffs. Gives you a vested interest in all of the classifications and
it's completely free to play. There's no obviously, it's completely free to play.
Yeah, it's for bragging rights. Absolutely. Yeah. So before we get into our commitments and classification polls and everything else, as always, we want to take a quick look at the online link for our Prep Baseball shop. Some serious swag on there. Shop.prepbaseball.com. Obviously, Austin's got that pullover on there from the store. That's my favorite piece. I've got an older one on today. It's actually not on the shop, but you probably don't want this one anyway. There's a lot of better stuff on there that you can choose from if you're so inclined to do so. So that's our where you can purchase merchandise. Couple things, and again, we're not, just as we did last week, we're not going to just rehash this over and over and over, but for parents and players out there, we have released our summer schedule. Each of those events throughout the state, there is a rising stars ID and a summer ID at each of those locations. The Rising Stars ID is for younger kids in grades 29 and 30. And then the summer IDs are for the 20.
I think you got it. I think it's 20, 30s, and 31s for Rising Stars.
Yeah. 30, 31 for Rising Stars.
Yeah. 26 through 29 for summer IDs.
And we've got one of those at each location. If you notice there, we're trying to, go to the larger metropolitan areas, the larger states throughout the state. So that is there. That's the schedule. Obviously, the one sort of outlier there is the Yellowhammer State Games, a 2-day event. It is the only invite-only event that we do this summer. It's at Sand Mountain Park in Albertville, Alabama, June 17th and 18th. Showcase and game on the 17th, and then each player will play in another game on the 18th. Big hit last year. We're trying to make that even larger this year. So that's our schedule. And then we recently, Austin, you want to talk about the one we just added, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, there we go. Just throw it on there. We have I guess we should probably backtrack. Obviously the future games is the pinnacle of our summer. And the senior future games, and junior future games all running conjunctly at the same time. Senior future games this year will be for the class of 2026. Future games will be for 2027s. And then the junior future games will be for the 2029s and 2030s and some select 2031s. And, we've gotten questions, what's in it for the 2028s, because we can take, the future games for 27s and 28s, but we feel with that, college recruiters not being able to talk to prospects until August 1st going into their junior season, it just wouldn't be fair to take a 28 over a 27 who's, hoping to be able to get recruited here in about a week after the future games. So we try to stick with 27s on our future games team. Well, now we've just announced just last night with the other Deep South states, we're running a Southeast Super Sophomore Games. I got that logo up in the top right, but those dates are August 2nd and August 3rd. I think that's a weekend at Lake Point Sports over in Cartersville, Georgia. As you can see, that's for 2028 prospects and some select 2029s. But we'll be running a 2-day event with Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and Tennessee. We'll be taking players over there from each state, the top 2028s and some select 2029s. We'll have a showcase in the morning on Saturday, and then kind of like the Yellowhammer State games, we'll have games on after the workout and then on Sunday. So that's just like the Yellowhammer State games, an invite-only event, serving kind of like the future games. It's a week after the future games, so and that's kind of will be the start of the 2026 future games, where we'll kind of start to narrow down our list, or not narrow down our list, but start building a list of who we want to look at for next year's future games team, and just kind of giving those top 2028s and some 2029s the ability to come and showcase their skills, because that they kind of not miss out on the future games. It's just we try to take mostly 2027s for the future games. So that's a big time event. That's one where we've been excited to roll out, and we announced it last night. So looking forward to that event. And just like the future games, the Super Sophomore Games, we'll be building a team based off players we see at our summer events, whether that's a summer ID, a summer ID, or the Yellowhammer State game. So that's how you can earn an invite there. So we just threw that schedule graphic up there a few minutes ago. If you're interested, head over to our website and learn more information about that. But yeah, excited for that event.
Yeah, it's going to be some premier 2028s across the Deep South, man. You get those other states involved. That's going to be a big time event. I mean, it's not the future games, but it's as close as you can get this year, because there's always that year that kids miss out or players miss out from the junior futures to the futures. Well, now we've got a little, got something there that sort of bridges that gap. And again, it's at Lake Point. It's at Lake Point. Obviously, most of you have been there. Just a premier facility. So that's our summer stuff. We'll move on to our commitment corner. Austin, do you want to do that? You want me to do it? Doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, we've got starting off, we have a pair of seniors from Hueytown, catcher Jarrett Kahn and first baseman Baker Davis. Like I said, both seniors who both go to Hueytown. They both committed to Lawson State. Outfielder Hudson Farnell, a 2025 from St. Paul's Episcopal down in Mobile. He also committed to Lawson State. Right-handed pitcher Gavin Greiner, another senior from Oxford. I think he throws their game one for Oxford. Has thrown some big innings and led that pitching staff for Oxford this year. He committed to Carson Newman. And then rounding out, we have a 2026 from Buckhorn, Caden Dornan. He committed to Bryan College. So we got 5 commitments. Jared Kahn, Baker Davis, and Hudson Farnell committed to Lawson State Community College. And then right-handed pitcher Gavin Greiner committed to Carson Newman. And right-handed pitcher infielder Caden Dornan from Buckhorn committed to Bryan College. So congrats to those 5 guys and their families on furthering their baseball career and going and playing at the next level.
Amen. And again, congratulations to those guys. So now we'll jump right into our classification polls. And if good with you, Austin, you want me to take 1A? You want to do 1A? It doesn't matter.
I could take 1A, but we'll go ahead and start by saying, we've said this in past episodes. The area series are about as important of a measuring, I guess you could say, a measuring stick for. I guess the area series for us carries tons of value into we can't rank a team who beat one team 2 out of 3. We feel like those area series are important in determining, when we do these rankings. So just kind of a lead into our rankings. Yeah, precursor for our rankings. So we'll go ahead and get into class. Go ahead.
And let me say one thing, it's all finalized on the field, and that's what Austin mentioned there. Those important area series, a team that wins a series over another team, I'm not saying 100% you have to rank that team above them, but if it's showcased on the field, then I think that obviously that takes more credibility than anything. And you'll see that as we move forward in our rankings. We had some tough decisions to make later in the larger classification. So Austin, get us cranked up in 1A.
And once we get through these rankings, you can pretty much throw rankings out the window, because it's survive and advance from now on. It doesn't matter if you have a number next to your name. It's all about winning 2 out of 3. So we'll go ahead and get into Class 1A this week. We have one new team, and they come in at number 10 this week, and that's Hubbardville, who comes in with a 15-5 record. They've had a strong season all year long, won their area, and they went 3-1 this past week, so they jump in at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is Brantley, who went 3-0 this past week, also winners of their area. They sit at 14-2. Billingsley is at number 8. They sit at 17-7 after a 2-0 week. Fayetteville also comes in at number 7. They went 2-1 this past week, pushing their record to 18-9. Florala comes in at number 6 this week at 15-7. I think they won 2 out of 3 against Kinston in their area championship this past week to wrap up that area. They went 3-1, pushing the record to 15-7, making a big jump. Obviously, you can see there the biggest jump this week in Class 1A is Addison. Addison comes in with a 20-8 record. I know they swept Athens Bible this past week. I think they've beaten Hackleburg over the past couple of weeks. I think Hackleburg beat them earlier in the season, but Addison was able to beat them a couple weeks ago. They've beaten some other talented teams in Class 1A, so felt like we had to reward them heading into the playoffs. So Addison jumps up from number 9 to number 5 with a 20-8 record. And then the top 4 stay the same. Leroy is 20-7. They went 1-3 this past week, but those 3 losses, I know 2 of them were to Robertsdale and Orange Beach, and another one was to a larger classification school down in South Alabama. And all 3 of those losses were 1 run. So no need to drop. We felt no need to drop down Leroy, playing that competition and playing them in close games. So Leroy stays at number 4. Millery stays at number 3. They went 2-1 this past week. They sit at 22-8, and like we've said, they've won that area over Leroy. Took 2 out of 3, and then Appalachian stays at number 2 with going 2-1 this past week, sitting at 21-3, and then staying at the top spot in Class 1A after a perfect 3-0 week. Hackleburg goes 3-0 and pushes their record to 23-5 heading into the playoffs. Looking at some teams just outside the top 10 heading into the playoffs, you've got Athens Bible, who's 13-7. Coosa Christian is 12-11. Ider is 16-9. Kinston, who I just mentioned, playing in that area championship with Florala this past week. Kinston comes in at 11-5. Lynn is 16-9. South Lamar is 10-12. Spring Garden is 16-8. Sweetwater was the one team to drop out of the rankings this past week. They sit at 13-14. And the rounding out in Class 1A is University Charter, who comes in with a 13-8 record.
And that'll bump us straight to the 2A classification, where we have one new team this week, and that team does debut at number 10, Pleasant Valley. They come in. They've been right outside the cusp of the top 10 all year long. It's just, these rankings they're difficult. I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. We feel that in most of these classifications, we've got a pretty strong hold on 6, 7, 8 teams, but those last 2 or 3 spots, man, are always very, very difficult. But Pleasant Valley finally makes their way in this week at number 10. They went 2-0 last week. They do sit at 16-10 after winning their area. Pike Liberal Arts, they stay put at number 9 this week. They did go 2-0 last week. They sit at 14-13. We've talked about them all year. Don't get caught up in that record. That record, they have played some larger schools throughout the season. Cottonwood, Austin Miller. There's Cottonwood. They stay put at number 8. They went 0-1 last week. They sit at 17-5, won that area. Number 7, Mars Hill Bible. They drop a spot last week after going 1-2. They drop a spot, but again, they are a formidable opponent in 2A, made it to the state finals last year, and very well are set up for a deep run this year as well. Wouldn't surprise me a bit to see them back in Oxford and Jacksonville. They come in with a record of 16-11. Red Bay, they make a jump. Them and Mars Hill swapped this week. Red Bay went 4-0 last week. They sit at 19-6. And you see there, they've got a big one against Hackleburg today. And let me tell you, what a way to get ready for the state playoffs for both of those teams. I'm sure they're going to throw pitchers an inning here, an inning there, just as a tune-up. But man, that's a great preparation for the state playoffs. So Red Bay, again, 4-0 last week. They come in at 19-6. Decatur Heritage, a team that I saw earlier in the year, very impressed with them. They did win their area. They went 2-2 this week. They defeated Lindsay Lane in a very tight 3-game series. They split the first 2 games, and Lindsay Lane really pushed them to the brink in game 3, but Decatur Heritage was able to hold on and salvage that series and win the area championship. Again, they dropped from 3-5 after a 2-2 week. Again, that impressive record still at 21-5. Ayrton drops from 2-4. They currently sit at 22-8. They went 2-2 last week. And listen, we know the Purple Cats are, it's like, a deep run is always in their forecast. And where that happens again this year or not, nobody knows, but it wouldn't surprise us one bit. They did Ayrton, that big area down there between them and GW Long is always interesting to follow every year. GW Long was able to win 2 out of 3 and win that area. Ayrton finished as the runner-up. As you see there, GW Long is right in front of them. They jump up from 5-3. They are at 17-10 after going 2-2 last week. They lost to they lost to someone Saturday after that area series. I forget who it was, but they come in at 17-10. Summerton, man, they make a jump from 4-2. I think they've won like 11 or.
Yeah, I think they've lost 1 game since our small town showdown.
Yes, and that's the defending 1A state champs that classed up this year to 2A, and they seem to be playing very well right now. They jump, as I mentioned, from 4-2 with a 20-6 record, and then continuing to hold on to the top spot, which they have for pretty much the entire back half of the season. The Yellow Jackets of Vincent, they were a perfect 4-0 last week. They come in with an overall record of 23-5, a team that we saw in the Small Town Showdown, a team I saw against Leeds about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Obviously, they are a legitimate contender in 2A. A couple of teams outside top 10, and listen, we've prided ourselves, and I even mentioned this a couple weeks ago, is that we're not going to have a tie for 10th. We're not going to take the easy way out. We're going to try to make the tough decisions. There are some teams right outside, and I think we can get started with that team right at the top. And these are listed alphabetically. But Bayshore Christian, man, they are at 12-13. They went 1-1 last week, made a deep run last year, I think, to the Final Four or Elite 8, I know. And that's a talented roster. They are sitting right outside the top 10 at 12-13. Belgreen is at 11-10. Cedar Bluff, I believe they finished runner-up to Pleasant Valley. In that area, they sit at 19-8. JU Blackshears at 14-11. We talked about Lindsay Lane pushing Decatur Heritage to the brink. They are the runner-up there. They have a 17-14 record. North Sand Mountain is at 19-8. They were ranked a couple weeks ago. Reeltown at 13-10, and rounding us out, a team that has really turned it around, Tuscaloosa Academy. I think, what was their record at one point, like 1-11 or something?
Yeah, and they beat Bibb County this past week, so they're rolling.
Yes, they did. Listen, I'll be honest with you. When Austin and I get together and talk about these, we looked at Tuscaloosa Academy at 1-11. We're like, man, that's they're not going to be a threat. Well, kudos to them. They have completely turned it around. You mentioned that big win over Bibb County. but they sit right outside the top 10 in 2A as well.
Yeah, and I think they had some basketball players at the start of the year, making their way back in. So they seem to be hitting their stride down the stretch.
I think they made it to the state finals in basketball as well.
Okay. Jumping into Class 3A this week, we have the same 10 teams. And starting off at number 10 is Whitesburg Christian after making their debut or making their way back into the top 10 last week. They won their area. They went 2-0 this past week. I think they beat Elkmont in their area championship. They sit at 17-10. Thorsby slides down one spot this week after going 2-1, splitting the first two games with Hell County, but ultimately winning that deciding game 3 to wrap up that area. They come in with a 25-8 record and coming at number 9. Jumping up one spot is Gordo. The Green Wave go 2-1 this past week and finish as a runner-up to Winfield in that area. They come in at number 8, like I said, with an 18-12 record. At number 7 is Collinsville, who's the Panthers slide down one spot. They went 1-2 this past week, pushing the record to 17-8. Lee Scott Academy jumps back up from 7 to number 6 this past week, going 2-1, pushing the record to 19-10. At number 5, sliding down one spot this week after going 0-3 on the week is St. James, but those 3 losses were to Prattville Christian in 3 pretty closely contested games. I was at the first game, and I know we'll talk about Prattville Christian, but those arms that they've got a real chance. But St. James slides down one spot to number 5 this week, going into the playoffs. Thomasville also slides down one spot this week. They went 2-1, pushing their record to 18-7. They'll be hosting the first round of the playoffs. And then jumping up one spot this week is Winfield. Jumping up 2 spots this week is Winfield. They jump up from 5 to 3 after going 3-0 this past week. They push their record to 25-6. And I'm sure you can attest to this when we're looking at game changers and for all these teams getting their records. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen Winfield and another team's game changer, beating that team. Winfield's racked up an impressive resume going into the playoffs, obviously with that 25-6 record. They won that area over Gordo. So they felt deserving of pushing them up to number 3 this week going into the playoffs. And then the top 2 stay the same. Glenwood goes 2-0, pushes their record to 23-4. Prattville Christian stays at the top spot after a series sweep in the area championship over St. James, going 3-0 and pushing their record to 27-2. And we'll talk. We'll try not to go as much in depth into these teams on this episode because that'll come tomorrow in our 6A through 1A playoffs first round preview. But those Prattville Christian and Glenwood, especially in 3A, those 2 teams, that'll be a fun matchup if they get to meet up in the later rounds of the Class 3A state playoffs. Looking at some teams outside the top 10 in Class 3A this week, Altamont. And it was kind of status quo for the top 10 this week. No one really had a bad week. But there are some teams in Class 3A this week outside the top 10 who, maybe on any other week, have a real case to make their way into the top 10. And leading it off is one of those teams, Altamont, who goes 4-0 and pushes their record to 16-4. They obviously won their area. We've heard some good things about Altamont, so that's a team to watch in the playoffs. Elkmont comes in at 16-10. Flomaton is winners over their area. They push their record to 15-8. 5 to 17-6. Another team to watch in Class 3A in the playoffs. JB Pennington is 17-13. Lauderdale County is 17-12. Phil Campbell is 18-11. Piedmont, another powerhouse Class 3A team to watch this in the over the next couple of weeks in the playoffs. Piedmont is 15-11. Providence Christian is 12-11. Vinemont is 22-7, and then rounding it out in Class 3A is Wicksburg, who comes in with a 13-9 record.
And that'll get us straight to 4A, where we've got 2 new teams this week. This is where it really started getting tough for us. Again, 2 new teams, make their way in. We'll get started with Alexandria. Alexandria went 1-1 last week. They currently sit at 16-12, and they do drop from 8 to 10. And, that's that's a tough drop from 8 to 10. But there were just some other teams that have really, caught fire that are really playing very well. And those two teams sit at number 9 and number 8. At number 9 is Central of Florence. They went 3-1 last week. They sit at 20-12. They finished runner-up to Deschler, correct? Yeah.
Correct. They split in that series and lost to game 3.
Yeah, they split with Deschler and lost game 3. And, we've talked about Deschler all year long and how good we think they are. Well, Central of Florence finished runner-up in that area. Obviously, will be in the playoffs this week. They are playing very well. Again, went 3-1 last week. They sit at 20-12. At number 8, I think Madison County made a brief appearance earlier in the year and then dropped out right before spring break. But the Tigers of Madison County appear to be rolling. They come in. That's an impressive 20-4 record. And a quick look at their schedule. They've only lost to 2 in-state teams, and one of them was 6A Hazel Green, and the other was 5A-Arab. They beat Buckhorn early in the year. Now, nothing against Madison County whatsoever, but it's a completely different Buckhorn team right now. And then they've got 2 out-of-state losses, but a very impressive 20-4 record for Madison County. They did go 4-0 last week, wrapping up an area championship. And they'll be hosting the playoffs this week. At number 7, a team that we saw on Saturday, Trinity Presbyterian. They jump up from 9 to 7. They did go 3-1 last week and won basically a de facto area championship series against Tallahassee, who is playing very well of late. Tallahassee started slow, playing very well. Trinity won game 1. Lost game 2, 2-1 in 9 innings, and then was able to come back and win game 3 over Tallahassee. I believe the score was 7-1 or something like that. So Tallahassee jumps up from 9 to 7, staying put at number
Trinity.
6. What's that?
Trinity jumps up from 9 to, you said Tallahassee.
Yeah, Tallahassee, my apologies. Trinity jumps up from 9 to 7. The Tigers of Deschler, we just talked about them, area champions. They stay put at number 6. After going 3-0 last week to run their record to 22-9. Haleyville, they also stay put at number 5 after going 4-0 and at 22-6. Austin, can you tell our audience what I've told you twice about Haleyville?
You said you think Haleyville is pretty for real.
I believe so. And that number 5 ranking may be a little bit of a disservice to them. But again, once that first pitch is made this Friday or Thursday, which some of these series are starting, these rankings don't mean anything. But I think Haleyville's won like 16 or 17 straight. That's a team to be on the lookout for. In 4A, they also stay put at number 4. They went 4-0 this week. They sit at 21-4. Bibb County, they dropped from 2 to 3. But don't read too much into that. Bibb County went 1-2 this week. Austin, do you remember who they played? I know it was.
They lost. I know they lost by 1 run to Northridge, and I think the other game was to Tuscaloosa Academy.
Yeah, they did lose to Tuscaloosa Academy, but that one run loss to Northridge is nothing to be ashamed of. But they do drop to number 3 with a 20-9 record, and part of the reason they dropped is that Etowah has really turned it on in the second half of the season. It's the same thing about Etowah every year. Coach Bone, he's going to go out and play the hardest schedule possible. Their record is probably not going to be great at the midway point. He's getting his players acclimated to playoff atmosphere type, and it looks like it's working as it has in the past. Etowah comes in, as I said, 20-12 after going 3-0 last week. They jump up from 3 to 2. And their area series, I believe it's Fayette County they play, gets started this Thursday. And then holding on to the top spot, they have been for the last several weeks after going 4-0 last week. Oak Grove has run their record to 24-2. And again, hold on to that top spot. So, man, that's some you look at a team like Haleyville at 5 and Madison County at 20-4 in the 5 and 8 spots. I believe that gives you some of the depth in 4A. And we've talked about the depth in 4A all year. Right outside the top 10, Bayside Academy, they come in at 16-14. That's a talented squad that, would be no surprise if they made a run in the playoffs. Hanley comes in at 16-12. Hoax Bluff, They are at 18-12 after going 2-0 this week. They finished runner-up in that area with Etowah. Munford, I believe they won their area
Yes.
in a exciting fashion. I think a walk-off home run or something late. But Munford is at 15-7. New Brockton is at 14-10. Orange Beach sits at 19-10. Satsuma, they finished runner-up to
won it.
Yeah, they won it with
Bayside.
That's right. Satsuma, the Gators won that area, and that went into late on Saturday. We were following that as we were out covering games. But yes, they won that over Bayside. They sit at 18-9. Tallahassee, we just talked about them. They're at 17-10. Westbrook Christians at 21-6. And rounding us out on teams to keep an eye on in 4A is W.S. Neal. They finished with a record. They finished a regular season record of 13-6.
That'll move us into Class 5A this week. We have the same 10 teams in Class 5A this week. Not much movement, just a couple little minor changes in the top 10. Staying at number 10 this week is Northside. Northside comes in with a 21-9 record. They went 2-2 this past week, and split with American Christian teams, and lost the deciding game 3 against Northside, or lost the deciding game 3 against ACA. But Northside stays put at number 10 with a 21-9 record. Sliding down one spot this week is Russellville, who goes 2-2 on the week. They finished as the runner-up in their area. But when you talk about Russellville, you know that there's consistent deep playoff runs in Class 5A, and it looks like they are gearing up for another one here going in over the next couple of weeks. Jumping up one spot this week after wrapping up their area over Holtville, Marbury comes in with a 24-5 record. They went 4-0 this past week, highlighted by 3 of those wins being over Holtville. At number 7 is Elmore County, who stays put at number 7 with a 22-9 record. They went 4-0 this past week, and I got to see them against Reeltown this past week, and was very impressed with them. And they can really swing it. They've got a veteran lineup, bunch of guys going to play at the next level. Elmore County is definitely a team to watch in the central part of the state. And number 6 is Lawrence County, who goes 2-0, pushes their record to 21-7. They won that area over Russellville and wrapped it up this past week, sweeping Priceville. Staying put at number 5 this week is Faith Academy, who finished as the runner-up in their area. They went 2-0 this past week and pushed their record to 20-5. At number 4 is St. Paul's Episcopal, who also goes 2-0, the winners of that area over Faith Academy. They pushed their record to 18-8-1. I think they had a tie with Gulf Shores this past week. And then swapping spots in this week's poll in Class 5A, number 2 and 3. Number 3 is American Christian, who drops down one spot this week.
They did drop.
They dropped, yeah. They go 2-1 this past week. Won that area championship over Northside. So they drop down to number 3. Jumping up one spot, replacing them is Madison Academy. The Mustangs go 4-0 and push their record to an impressive 28-6. With impressive wins. Obviously, they won their area. Impressive wins on their resume. Madison Academy, another powerhouse program in Class 5A to watch over the next few weeks. And then staying at the top spot is Springville. The Tigers go 3-0 and stay at the top spot, pushing their record to 25-4. Looking at some teams outside the top 10 this week, you have Arab at 17-10. Boaz is 21-8. Briarwood Christian is 16-14, but that's a Briarwood Christian team that I think is a team to watch, a sneaky team to watch in the playoffs over the next couple of weeks. Demopolis is strong at 20-9. Alberta is 19-7. Headland is 20-8. Holtville is 14-4. Leeds is 21-11. Shelby County is 16-12. And rounding it out, UMS Wright is 15-10. And there are a lot of, especially in 5A, we've talked about the depth of Class 5A. There are 3 or 4 20 plus win teams outside the top 10. It's 5A is going to be one of my favorite classifications to follow in the playoffs. And
there are a couple teams in that outside the top 10 that are hosting ranked teams this week. So yeah, we'll be really, really interested. Don't put that 6A graphic up right yet. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you take 6A.
Absolutely. And let me just go ahead and say this. This very well may be the hardest single classification in our years of ranking. This may be the hardest we've ever had to work and the most time that we've ever spent on rankings. Because again, a couple of things. Number one, we've talked about we think those area series are important and we put more weight on those area series. A couple other things. Number two, we've mentioned this about 3 times already. Beginning this weekend, it doesn't matter. Austin said it right. It doesn't matter if there's a number by your name or not. And then, number 3, we look at teams and there's only, and again, we could take the easy way out and have a tie for 9th and a tie for 10th, but we're going to stick with 10 teams. And I can assure you, when we put this graphic up and we show those top 10 teams this week, man, there's going to be 3 or 4 teams outside that say, man, we should be ranked. And you know what? You may be right. But, teams get in, they win. We're not going to move them down. Teams behind them, they start winning, catching fire. And then they have real, impressive wins in area. It's hard not to reward those teams. So with that being said, Austin, if you don't mind, you can go ahead and pop up that slide there. We'll see how 6A is played out. Look at all of that movement this week in 6A. And listen, as I said, it was hard. It was hard. A lot of time spent on this one. Oxford, the Yellow Jackets, they do drop from 3 to number 10. And, I'll be honest with you, that's something that we had a little bit of a difficult time doing. But we've got to put the proof in the pudding, and that's on the field. We've talked about those area games. Oxford is a team that can win the entire 6A. Oxford's also a team that's got one of the headline matchups in 1A this year with Mountain Brook next week, and we'll talk in detail more about that tomorrow. But they dropped from 3 to 10. They got swept in the first 2 games by Pell City. Oxford sits at 23-9, and there are the Panthers of Pell City making their debut this week in 6A. They've been right outside the top 10 all year. They come in at 17-11 after that impressive 2-game sweep of Oxford. Number 8, Gardendale. Man, this is a team for weeks we've been saying, man, we need to get Gardendale in, but the teams in front of them weren't losing. Well, Gardendale has continued to roll off wins over the likes of Mountain Brook and Hueytown. They won their area in impressive fashion. They open up the playoffs. Beat Thompson. They open up they are getting started this Thursday with their first round area series. So Gardendale jumps back in the poll at 19-8 at number 8. The Jaguars of Northridge went 4-0 last week. They are playing very well of late. They make a big move from 10 to 7 at 21-7. At number 6, a team that we had ranked preseason at number 10, they got off to a very slow start. A team that we've said for the last 2 weeks to keep an eye out on them. I've seen them a couple times over the last 2 weeks, and they went on the road or in game 1, I'm sorry, but they did sweep a very good Hazel Green team for the area championship. We knew that would be a really interesting series to watch. Buckhorn won in impressive fashion on Friday night. And then Saturday, I think that game went 9 innings. We were just leaving the Tallahassee Trinity game, and we were game tracking that as it went into 9. I think Trey Burgess had the big hit in the bottom. Ty had the big hit in the bottom of the 9th to give Buckhorn that win. So that catapulted them to number 6. At number 5, the Patriots of Homewood. They jump up from 8 to 5. They went 4-0 last week. They are at 26-6, a very impressive record. Helena jumps up from 7 to 4 this week after going 2-0 this past week after defeating Spain Park. And they had their backs to the wall, I guess you can say. They had to win the first 2 games, and they did so. I was at game 2. Helena sort of was in control of that game throughout, had some big hits, but the Huskies come in at number 4 with an 18-13 record. They finished runner-up to number 3, Chelsea. Chelsea won that area, and we've talked about that 6A Area 7 all year long. To win that area is very impressive. Chelsea went 2-0 last week with the 2-game sweep over Pelham. They sit at 19-9, coming in at number 3. Mountain Brook, they stay put at number 2. They went 2-1 last week. They sit at 23-8. We talked about it, and we'll talk more about it next week. That is a big-time matchup right out of the gate this coming Friday, as they will host Oxford, number 10 Oxford, in the first round. And then staying put at number 1 is Hartselle, the Tigers. They went 3-1 last week, wrapped up their area championship, lost to, was it Houston out of Tennessee? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, lost to Houston out of Tennessee. They hold on to the top spot. I will get to see Hartselle tonight as they are traveling to Bob Jones. I've already mentioned that. So that'll be an interesting game to watch. Obviously, Bob Jones has area to finish up. Hartselle's getting ready for the first round of the state playoffs, but looking forward to being there tonight. I'm telling you, man, that was a difficult top 10 to rank. Well, with the difficulty there are some teams that are right outside the top 10 that very well could make a run. Last year, I don't think Hillcrest was ranked at the end of the season, correct?
Negative.
Went on a run and won the state championship. So it's very possible that a team that we're about to discuss outside the top 10 could very well make it and win the whole thing. The Bearcats of Coleman are at 16-4, winning their area, hosting first round this week. Gulf Shores finished runner-up. I know they were in a must-win situation against Spanish Fort and was able to win a tight game. Or no, I think they tinned them.
I think they won the series. I think. Yeah.
I know they had to win to get in, and they beat Spanish Fort once. I know that. They sit at 17-12-1. Hazel Green, the Trojans, man, we probably were too mean to Hazel. I don't want to use the word mean, but listen, those teams that went, you take, for instance, Pell City, you take, for instance, Gardendale, what they've been doing of late, it's hard to keep them out of the top 10. Hazel Green, I've talked all year about how much I love that Hazel Green team. They sit at 25-11. Again, we talked about that clash with Buckhorn where they came up on the short end of that. The Golden Gophers of Hueytown, man, they've been in that 8, 9, 10 spot all year. Listen, Coach Chandler does a great job. They sit at 23-12. They went 2-1 last week. It was hard. It was hard, to get those 8, 9, 10 spots. Hueytown does drop out this week, but again, they'll be hosting a state playoff series this week. Muscle Shoals finished runner-up to Hartselle. They sit at 16-10. They'll be on the road. Saraland won their area at 19-9. They went 2-0 last week. Southside has put together an impressive record. They went 0-1 last week and sit at 20-10. Spain Park, they did miss out on the playoffs, but again, in that 6A Area 7 area, it's that we still feel like they're a quality team, just going to miss out on the playoffs. We've talked about it all year. There's going to be some teams miss out due to the areas they're in. Spanish Fort, man, they seem to, and they're a lot like Russellville. When you think about late in the season, getting into the playoffs, talk to Coach Walker early in the year at our South Alabama Showdown, and they were just not playing real good at that time. And that was the same thing that happened last year. But you look at them now, here they are at 17-13, winners of that area. Spanish Fort could, again, they're setting themselves up for another deep run this year. Stanhope Elmore, they come in at 20-12. They went 2-0 this year. They won their area, correct?
Yes. Another team to watch.
Yeah, that's a team to watch, 100%. Stanhope Elmore, that's a 20-win ball club there. And then Wetumpka, they finished runner-up to Stanhope.
Yep.
Yeah. I get those areas confused down there. They finished runner-up to Stanhope. They're at 18-12, and another team to keep eyes on. So, man, I'm telling you, I know I probably stumbled through that a little bit at times, but that was very difficult ranking those teams in 6A. So Austin was glad to pass that to me this week.
Yeah, you asked me back in 1A if you wanted to take 1A or me. I know I was going to take 1, 3, 5, and 7. So I said I'll take 1A. Jumping into 7A this week, we have the same. We have one new team in the top 10, but starting off at number 10, we have Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. That should be Hillcrest, not Hillcrest. Gotta go fix that. But Hillcrest Tuscaloosa drops down 2 spots this week. They went 1-3 on the week. Lost the first 2 games to Thompson. So lost the series to Thompson. They've got a big area series to conclude their regular season this week against Prattville. I think they need to win 2 out of 3 to advance, to finish as a runner-up in the to advance to the playoffs, because I think they beat Tuscaloosa County 2 out of 3. So Hillcrest Tuscaloosa comes in at number 10. At number 9 is that one new team this week. Grissom.
I got my weekly text from that coach.
Yeah. That's yeah. I'm sure he's not the only one saying that after seeing that list. So coming in at number 9 is Grissom. The Tigers make their way back into the top 10 in Class 7A after a 3-0 week. I think they swept their series over Albertville and sit atop their area standings with a big rivalry area series coming up this week against Huntsville. At number 8, jumping up 1 spot, is Fairhope. Fairhope, the Pirates go 3-1 on the week and also sit atop their area standings going into the final week of area play. They come in at number 8. At number 7, sliding down 5 spots this week, is Vestavia Hills. The Rebels go 1-2 on the week. They split, but they lost the 2 games to Hoover. I think they won the game 3, but slide down 5 spots. And we've talked about it. That's just the tough area. Something's got to give with those 4, especially 3 teams with Hewitt and Hoover, Vestavia, and Oak Mountain. 2 of those teams aren't going to make the playoffs. So Vestavia slides down 5 spots this week. We obviously think they are one of the talented teams in class in the whole state. But got to reward those teams that do win those area games. So Vestavia comes in at number 7 this week. Jumping up 1 spot this week is Thompson. The Warriors jump up from 7 to 6 after sweeping Hillcrest. I believe they go 3-0, pushing the record to 26-11. Thompson, Hoover jumps up 1 spot from 6 to 5 this week. The Bucks had a big area sweep over Vestavia Hills. Huge week for the Bucks. That I think punched their ticket to the playoffs. And they'll play Hewitt this week in the area championship. But Hoover goes 2-0. Like I said, they push their record to 23-12. And you keep going back. 5 of those losses are to the likes of the CIF teams when they went over and played in spring break or in the early part of the season over in California. So they're not really, but I mean they're pretty much 23-7. But Hoover put together a strong resume, and it seems they've played some tough teams, and looks to be paying off here down the stretch for the Bucks. Sliding up 1 spot this week is Central Phoenix City. The Red Devils go 3-0 this past week, sweeping Smith Station, and I think that they've already clinched another area championship. Going into this week, they play Opelika. At number 3 this week is Enterprise. Enterprise, the Wildcats go 4-0 this past week. They sit at 26-1, an impressive record. Have a big area championship this week against Dothan. Both Enterprise and Dothan are both 4-0 in their area, and that series will obviously decide who wins that area championship. So Enterprise comes in at number 3. At number 2 is Bob Jones, jumping up from number 3 to number 2. The Patriots go 4-0 this past week, pushing their record to 29-8. They swept Florence this past week. So the defending state champs continue to climb up the rankings this week to number 2. And then maintaining the top spot this week, after a 3-0 week, the Hewitt-Trussville Huskies pushed their record to 28-2 after sweeping 3 games over Oak Mountain. And they also have clinched an area a spot in the playoffs, and a huge series which I think gets started tonight or tonight. Hewitt-Trussville and Hoover going to decide that area. I think they both go in 3-1. So personally, I know we both hope that they split. So Thursday, we'll have a game in the Birmingham area to go watch before we go to the playoffs, some playoff games on Friday. So a split would be perfect for us. But Hewitt-Trussell comes in at number 1 with a 28-2 record. Looking at some teams outside the top 10 in Class 7A this week, Alma Bryant is 17-10, and I think they're a top. They're that area 1 in Class 7A or top 2 at least. Auburn is 15-15. Dothan is 19-9, getting ready for that big series against Enterprise this week. I think it started tomorrow. James Clemens is 23-10. Oak Mountain is 16-15. Opelika is 19-11. And the one team to drop out this week is Tuscaloosa County, who pushes their record to 24-10. Looks like you won't be needing to eat any dinner tonight. Looks like you'll be fed.
I hear you, man. Hey, let me tell you, Chad. Saturday we don't have a clue where we're going. It just depends on what playoff series ends on Friday, what's possible we can get to. So it's a possibility I could be there Saturday, but I will be there tonight if that's any consolation.
So that'll wrap us up for the class polls, the final class polls for 1A through 6A. Like we said, 7A still has a week left to play. So next week, this time on Monday, next Monday we'll release the 7A polls. We won't have obviously have a podcast just for the 7A polls, but those polls will be out on our website. But that's the final 1A through 6A polls heading into the playoffs. We'll go ahead and get into our Power 25 poll, which is our top 25 ranking. Not that one. Top 25 poll of all AHSAA teams, regardless of classification. Starting it off at number 25 this week, we have Grissom, who comes in with a 22-10 record. Oxford slides down to number 24 at 23-9. Pell City makes their debut at number 23. They sit at 17-11. Gardendale is number 22 with a 19-8 record. Northridge is at number 21 with a 21-7 record. American Christian stays put at number 20 with a 24-12 record. Buckhorn makes a jump in this week. Big splash in the Power 25. They come in at number 19 with a 22-11 record. Glenwood slides up, I think, 4 spots this week to number 18 with a 23-4 record. Also jumping up this week is Madison Academy. The Mustangs jump up 6 spots to number 17. They sit at 28-6. Prattville Christian jumps up to number 16. That's a 5-spot jump for Prattville Christian. They sit at 27-2. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa comes in at 21-12 at number 15. At number 14 is Homewood at 26-6. At number 13 is Springville, jumping up 5 spots. They sit at 25-4. At number 12 is Helena, who sits at 18-13. And number 11 is Fairhope, who sits at 23-9. And number 10 is Vestavia Hills at 21-8. And number 9 is Chelsea at 19-9. And number 8 is Mountain Brook at 23-8. And number 7 is Thompson at 26-11. And number 6 is Hartsville at 24-7. And number 5 is Hoover at 23-12. And number 4 is Central Phoenix City at 28-7. And number 3 is Enterprise at 26-1. Bob Jones jumps up to number 2 with a 29-8 record, and then maintaining this top spot. I think that they've been the wire to wire in the Power 25 poll. The Hewitt-Trussell Huskies stay at the top spot with a 28-2 record. And that'll also be the final Power 25 poll of the season. But like I said, we'll have that updated Class 7A poll next week heading into the first round of their playoffs.
And that will wrap us up this week, or not this week. That'll wrap us up today. And as always, just a couple of things to remind you. Be on the lookout tomorrow for the Mizuno Pitcher of the Week and the Mizuno Player of the Week. This will also be the last week of that as well. We do not do that during the playoffs, during the playoff season. Wednesday, we'll be releasing our Diamond Notes. That will be released on Wednesday as well. And then you can stay up to date on the scout blogs that we get out and cover and, write up standouts from each of the games. We'll be updating that as we see games during the week. One thing to note is that beginning next week, we won't see as many games beginning next week because there are no midweek games. This week, there are some midweek games that teams are getting prepared for the start of the playoffs, and obviously 7As are finishing up their area. But yeah, that will be the scout blogs. You can check that as you always can. Just a reminder, tomorrow we will have our first round playoff podcast. That is again at 10 a.m. tomorrow, where we will be looking at and giving our predictions for every matchup in 1A through 6A. As I mentioned before, you probably need to have a cup of coffee and some snacks with you because that one may last. It will last a little bit longer, but we'll do our best.
4.5 hours last year.
4.5 hours, I believe. So let's hope it doesn't go that long. But again, talking baseball, we enjoy doing it, and we want to try to talk about every matchup the most as much as we can. So that is tomorrow. Don't forget that tomorrow at 10 a.m. 1A through 7A picks, and we'll preview each of those matchups. And then in conclusion, or to wrap this up, as always, if you are looking for any information, anything from across the state with high school baseball, you can always go to our website at prepbaseballreport.com/Alabama. Up at the top toolbar, you'll see AHSAA. Click there, and then below it will pop up all of our heat sheets. We'll pop up our scout blogs, our classification polls, our scout blogs, even go back as far as the team previews that Austin did before this season got started. So again, man, this is the last regular one.
I was going to say one thing. I don't know if you're about to close it out, but like I said, also the bracket challenge. We've got, I think it's 2 more spots. Like I said at the start of the show, 2 more spots to fill out in the Class 6A through 1A pairings. Once we get all that finalized, we'll release the brackets right then, and then the bracket challenge will go live shortly after, about an hour after. So just waiting and making sure that bracket gets finalized and make sure we have the right matchups. And then the bracket challenge will go live. So for those who are waiting, just keep an eye out, and it should be out shortly.
No doubt. Well, we appreciate you jumping on with us. Look forward to talking with you again tomorrow to break down these matchups, give our who we think is going to win. But again, thanks for jumping on. And instead of next week, hopefully we see you tomorrow. And as always, thanks for your support. Thanks for following. We'll see you. Talk to you tomorrow.